Welcome to West Virginia Beer Roads, a podcast all about beer from a West Virginia perspective. I'm Erin McCoy, here with my podcast partner, Charles Backway.
Thank you, Erin. So today we're getting back to a program format that we haven't used in the last few years, but one we hope to continue regularly this coming year. It's our Roundtable discussions. The Roundtable is where a group of us sit down to discuss just about any topic related to craft beer. The trends, news, breweries, beer styles, and also info on other beverage alcohol products. For this season's Roundtables, we'll be recording our discussions at popular craft beer outlets around the Charleston and Huntington regions of West Virginia. So for today's Roundtable session, we're at the East End Pub on Charleston's East End. Where else? It's a cozy little place. It's been going strong ever since it started up back in 2019. Joining Erin and I for the general discussion today will be craft beer friend and enthusiast Libby Rojas, also from Charleston. But first, Erin and I get a quick introduction of today's venue from Susie Chapman, the proprietor of East End Pub. Susie, welcome to West Virginia Beer Roads.
Thanks for coming in.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us. We're excited. Can you tell me a little bit about the East End Pub? What makes this place special?
Well, actually, when I opened it in 2019, what I wanted was a small, cozy neighborhood hangout, and that's definitely what we got. And our staff is small, and my kitchen guys, Mike and Carter, and Josie, kitchen girl, literally put out the best food, consistent all the time. So if you've not been here, you need to come check us out. And we try to, we're working with 6 taps, and we try to constantly just keep some kind of West Virginia beer going, and our cooler's full. So like I said, if you've not been here, you need to come out. Check us out.
Well, talking about those taps, so you've got some craft on tap, I see.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I do believe I spy some Devil Anns back there behind you. So
Oh yeah.
How is your craft beer business?
It's we try to keep a good rotation going. We have, like I said, just 6 taps, but we keep a great variety. We've always got a sour. We've always got IPAs up, a blonde for those that don't want to just settle for the other tap we have, PBR. They want to get a fancier beer. And then we have one that's just reserved for miscellaneous, whether it's, an
Seasonal
amber,
or
just
something like
seasonal, anything like that. But, Devil Anns goes up, and it's up and down in pretty much one day. As small as we are, people drink it fast. They love it.
Absolutely, and it's exciting, and that's definitely, I think, the atmosphere that Charles and I are certainly picking up on here. And again, thank you for having us. What can people find on the food menu if they visit the East End Pub?
Oh, well, we're kind of known for our egg rolls.
Okay.
And they're such a hot commodity. I mean, it's kind of like by Wednesday, if you haven't had them, you may be able to get some Thursday. They go fast, and we just do a limited quantity each week. We're also really known for our hot dogs. People love them, and our burgers are fantastic too. And any kind of special Mike comes up with for the week, it's always killer. So. Yeah, we do a great job here. I'm really proud of my people.
Well, we're very excited to be here. It's a great evening, and thank you for hosting us. We appreciate it very much.
You're very welcome. Like I said, thanks for coming in.
Yeah.
And now Susie has left, and we've added another person, another guest for our roundtable discussion today.
That's right.
An old friend, an old beer friend, and I don't mean she's old, but just that as long as I've been drinking beer in this town, I've seen Libby.
Absolutely.
So we got Libby Rojas here with us, a member of Craze and some of the other groups that we run around with. Libby, welcome to our roundtable discussion.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to have you, Libby. Thank you for joining us.
We're now leaving winter. This is April, mid-April. It's been warm here in Charleston, West Virginia. That means the springtime beer styles are out, and people are starting to bring out new beers and new things for the warmer weather, because we don't do a lot of that. I mean, we see, IPAs all year round. It doesn't seem to change whether it's winter or summer or spring or fall. What do you guys think about springtime beers? I mean, what helps you get in the mood for spring? Is there any particular beer, Libby, you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I always look forward to a good Kolsch in the spring. It's spring and summer. They're just, light and tasty, but yet they're very beery.
Refreshing.
Yeah, no, I'm a Kolsch fan. Ever since I went to Germany and drank them over there, and I really found out what Kolsch was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And and now we got a lot of people even in Charleston here making good Kolsch. I mean, yeah. So, Aaron?
Yeah, springtime. Yeah, definitely Kolsch. As far as styles, that seems to fit in really well for spring. I feel like a lager fits in well for spring for me as well too, because that's probably not my always go-to as far as beer style. So for me, it's a lighter, crisper, something that I enjoy this time of year.
Yeah, you're talking about a light lager, maybe.
Light lager,
a
yes.
Pilsner or even, and we're lucky here in Charleston. We've got a couple of our breweries now making those kind of beers.
We do, and making them well.
Yeah, it's not just here in Charleston, but I mean, West Virginia brewers are doing a good job with
I love
lagers.
a good lager. Although for me, a lager is a year-round kind of beer, especially like a Vienna lager.
Oh, yeah.
Although I guess a Vienna lager is more of a winter-fall lager.
Yeah, I think of it as a fall thing just because it has that fall color. You
Right.
know? Yeah.
Sure.
I was going to say, I also, though, for spring, do love, the sours and the Gozas even more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because they just fit the lightness.
Salty sweet.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
for me, salty sweet.
Yeah.
It's a little. Well, if it's fruited, if it's a straight Goza, obviously not. But
And
salted.
I think around West Virginia, we see mostly fruited up
Right.
Gozas.
We
We
do,
don't
yeah.
see a lot of straight Gozo. There used to be one or two you'd see now and then, but
Yeah.
I don't even know if I hate to mention them because I'm not sure they're still making them. Impetus Goza from Bridge Brew Works, that was a straight
That was
Goza.
stellar.
And yeah, I hope they make that again this year. I think they've maybe made it on and off. Maybe they've made it every year, but I'm saying they might make it, but you kind of have to go to Fayetteville sometimes to get it.
To get it, yeah. A good saison is a really good spring beer as well. Obviously, that's not just a spring beer. I mean, it's year round, but I like it. It's funky. I like funky occasionally, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
I
All
feel
right.
like a funkier beer is better in spring than summer.
I would agree. 'Cause
Yeah, it doesn't go
I
with
don't want
the
it
heat
super
so
hot.
much.
Right. I don't want it so hot.
Well, as we're tasting beer here, I guess I have to divulge that Aaron McCoy selected our first beer that we're tasting here at the East End Pub. It's on their tap today, and it's. Aaron, you want to introduce the beer and tell us what it is?
It is the Free Folk Porter, so it is clearly not a spring beer. It was just what I wanted to sample. So, it's at the end of the season, so that's fair enough. So we're going to talk about this a little bit.
Yeah, now, porter styles, I mean, they can be American style if they're more hopped up, like, more bitter or more flavorful in that sense from the hops, or they can be like an English style, which really is a malt-driven, more of a malt-driven style, and it's, kind of a sweet, nice, lighter style, lower ABV beer. And so this one I think kind of falls, what do you think, kind of in between those two?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, it does have. I feel like some of the English porters I've had where it's almost kind of got that tartness
Yeah.
to it, which you don't see in a lot in like the sweeter American porters.
Right. And Free Folk is in Fayetteville, West Virginia, and we went down there, I guess last year sometime, and went to their new brewery and tap room. That's it's outside of Fayetteville.
Right. Hiko? Is it Hiko?
Hico.
Hico, I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Hico.
Oh,
West
where all the
Virginia.
whitewater rafting takes place.
Yeah. So anyway, this porter, it's solid. It's I would call it more of an American style porter.
I think it's more of an American style, yeah.
I mean, it's definitely more carbonated than a traditional style porter would be, which actually doesn't make it a bad spring offering.
True.
It's
No, and
lighter.
it's super light.
It's fizzy.
Yeah.
It's kind of got that tartness to it that kind of makes it taste lighter.
Yeah, and I will say, like as we said, we're at the end of the season, the winter season into spring, here we come. But there are so many craft beer drinkers, especially new people, that they're so intimidated by any kind of a dark liquid set in front of them. They're like, oh, this is going to be thick and heavy and or excessively alcoholic. But this is incredibly light. It's got a very light mouthfeel. It's very easy to drink.
Kind
It's got
of
a nice
roasty.
roasty
Yep.
smell to it,
I find it's got a good. I feel that in the finish. What
Yeah.
you just said about the roastiness, I get that in my finish.
And I like the fizziness myself. A lot of porters are flatter.
Yeah.
I guess
True.
Which is
Certainly.
fine, especially if it's a thicker, sweeter porter. But this being a lighter porter, the fizziness just adds to it, I think.
So as we move on now on the topic of beer tasting, and since we've had our first beer, we're lubricated and ready to go. But beer flights, I've been interested recently to see that
Touchy.
people are kind of getting down on flights. There's a category
are.
of people around the country that are writing and saying, beer flights are passé. And has anybody heard or did you react to that?
I mean, I've heard people talk about it in the past, and people speaking about it from a bar perspective. They're a pain. They slow you down. They
Pain in the ass to wash.
They're a pain to deal with. But like I was saying earlier, Charles, I'm in favor of a flight.
Yeah, well, I am too. I think so. There's two of us that are voting for these bars and breweries, especially. Not so much a bar, but a brewery outlet that's owned by the brewery that's selling their own beer, and that's all they have. And I've never had their beer before, and I know they all say, well, you should just be buying a pint. Well, I don't know that I want a pint of a beer I've never had that I wouldn't like.
Right? Do I want to spend $5 to $10 on something I hate?
It just kind of depends on your preference. Like, I feel like half pours could be a better solution. The reason I say that is I get it. I like a flight because it gives me the opportunity to taste a bunch of different beers. I also, though, can see kind of the 50-50 perspective of the fact that you maybe don't get enough of the taste of the beer that you're sampling in a flight in order to really judge its taste properly. So I've read enough of that as well that I kind of can see that. And it depends, I think, on a style in particular. So, the porter that I just talked about, which normally would be kind of better, warmer. So, would it be as good in a super cold flight with the rest of the flights? Who knows?
Well, see, I think here are some of the positives I see about flights for a brewery if I'm in their tap room. Do you know how many times if I get a flight, I take a picture of it and post it on social media because it's pretty, it's got different color beer and that's something that if it's just a beer, I wouldn't be as likely in one glass as I am with a four beer board, whatever you want to call it. It just seems like you see a lot of those on social media. And also, I like the idea that I can compare two tasting beers side by side. Sometimes there are two IPAs, for instance. Maybe I got three IPAs in that flight.
Right.
And then I can kind of really compare, where if I have just a beer, I'm not able to really compare it as much, with the other.
I still feel like it's a better... Like a tasting is one thing, if you as far as a flight, you're just tasting. But to really compare in complexity and to have enough of the liquid that you're tasting, that's where I feel like maybe a half pour is better. So if you get a flight and you're like, oh, I like this, but I really want to know if I like this, for my personal opinion, I would be like, all right, I'd rather have a half pour.
Yep.
I think that should be part of the whole arsenal. I mean, to me, the ultimate way would be to offer flights and half pours, as well as full pours. Plus, also have your educated beer tender.
Oh, yeah.
To talk to people.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think the other thing that I've heard or read as well about why they don't like flights is that the beer is served in that little tiny glass.
Right.
That is not the appropriate glass for that beer style. And I'm going, well, what town do you live in? Because in Charleston, nobody puts beer in an appropriate glass. So even if I buy the pint, I don't get an appropriate glass.
I've been to breweries where they have the little Belgian tasting glasses.
Yeah, I've seen
and
those.
they give you
those.
Actually, I went to one where they gave you the little pint glasses and the little ones, depending on what kind of beer you got. So I was like, wow, fancy.
Oh, that is fancy.
That is fancy.
Yeah. And I'm an advocate of proper glassware for beers. I mean, and different beer styles have kind of, through the years, developed an affinity for certain shapes of glasses. But in most places in the country, I mean, I travel some, and I get, around. I don't really find hardly any. I just mean there's very few that really pay attention to glassware and have all these different shaped glasses for the different kinds of beers. That just doesn't happen.
No, it doesn't.
I mean, it does
And it
happen in a
should.
few places, but those are rare. Yeah.
I like appropriate glassware.
Yeah, it's nice. And I hope in West Virginia we end up, well, in the next few years, I can be hopeful that some of the places and some of the bars and some of the brew pubs will have a little more appropriate glassware and different glassware for different styles of beer they make. And I'm still hopeful that we can get there.
I agree. I get excited when I go someplace and they hand me something in a
the
Belgian
correct
glass, and I'm like, ooh.
Yeah, I don't think that's something like beer styles are discussed and like how they taste and what's in them, etc. But I definitely don't think that's something that's discussed that I've heard locally anyway, as far as, what beer style should be in what glass. So I guess that's maybe something that should be part of that, because people might not be aware of it if their beer tender is not telling them that's what it should be in.
No, that I agree that it's not something in our market that people are very aware of, not the customers nor certainly the servers and the bar owners.
Right.
No. Well, we're here at the East End Pub in Charleston, West Virginia, on the east end, of course, of Charleston. It's a nice, cozy little place. They have a nice menu and good taps. Good place to come with your friends and family, and we see a lot of people we know in here right now.
Grabbing a bite to eat. Their food's fantastic.
Yeah.
Come get a craft beer. Check it out.
Well, while we were talking about beer service and flights and the glassware and things like that, one thing that goes hand in hand with beer service and all the styles of beers and the craft beer styles and the glassware styles, and that's draft prices. I don't know, but it's you're starting to see, nationally it's being talked about. I mean, craft beer is getting more and more expensive per glass. And what do you think about that, Libby?
I mean, part of it depends. There's a West Virginia brewery that's pretty popular that sometimes has outrageous prices for their
Specialty,
for their beer, for their specialty beers,
batches.
like even more expensive than well-known specialties, and you see that reflected in the draft prices. And part of it's they don't have the same economy of scale. So you kind of do, part of you wants to say, well, they're not even as famous or doing as whatever, so why should they charge so much? But they're also working on a smaller economy of scale, so their ingredients cost more.
Right. No doubt about it.
And so I think that's something people need to keep in mind,
Yeah.
If you're going somewhere and it's a smaller brewery, it's actually costing them more to do it than the big famous place.
Yeah, and even people like Sierra Nevada, I mean, that's a craft brewery, but they're huge. I mean, compared to any local place in West Virginia, I mean, our bigger breweries, well, I shouldn't say our bigger ones, our biggest ones here are probably doing like maybe 5,000 barrels a year, and most of our breweries in West Virginia are under 1,000 barrels a year. And that's compared to millions of barrels, for some of these giant breweries.
Right,
that,
and their profit margins are simply smaller. So, so I don't always mind paying more, but sometimes I go, what?
Right. Oh yeah. Like what is this extra cost? I mean, I from a personal consumer standpoint, I definitely see it in regards to anything fruited. Or anything, double dry hop. Like it's an ingredient driven price, which I get. And especially if you're talking about a craft beer bar, like we're at a brew pub now, or a pub on the East End that carries craft beer. You've got that retail factor involved, and so that affects the price as well. So there's so many factors, ingredients, and what warehouse they have to go through, or the distributor that they have to go through, that influences their prices. And I get that it can be eye-opening in terms of if you're in buying it from the brew pub or getting it retail.
When I've gotten sticker shock, I mean, I'll be honest, but it's also an inflationary time.
It is.
A craft beer pint can't cost $5 for 10 years.
That's fair. That's fair.
And 10 years ago, a decent pint cost about $5. So I feel like complaining because it's gotten more expensive is a little disingenuous because everything's gotten more expensive.
No, it's true, and I think most people recognize that. And I just, what worries me though is that we do live. You got to remember where we live. We're in West Virginia. It's one of the lower per capita income states in the country, so people can't afford to pay as much as maybe other parts of the country or other places, big cities, where the wages are higher and the people make more money. I just wonder if we price our stuff like New York price. How aren't we limiting our market? It's a real conundrum that I don't know how we solve that in West Virginia, because we just don't have as many people with the kind of income that's required to buy craft beer.
Right.
Well, yeah, it is a conundrum because, if not enough people are buying it, it's not going to be made as much. Yeah. But then it's going to get more expensive. So,
right.
Yeah, it is. And, thankfully, we're starting to get more distribution in this state and have been for a minute, which, obviously we are all appreciative of. But again, going through that retail chain, it's even more so challenging financially to West Virginia residents because, it's not like going to your local pub and just, sitting at the bar and saying, hey, give me a pint. You're trying to get a can to go or trying to get a mixed 6-pack. And you end up paying, a lot more because it's not at the source. So that is definitely a problem, and, not one that's not been discussed. But it's out there, and I imagine it influences the regular consumer's price. There's probably a beer that's out of state that we finally have the ability to buy that they're not going to pay because they're going to get less product for their buck than they would if they bought a different product. That's not, so high.
I think in the craft market, it's because everybody, like you say, they're lower volume places, so their per unit costs are going to go up and be higher. So okay, we're going to have a lot of drafts at $7 a pint around here. Maybe some at $6, maybe some even still at $5. A few beers that are craft quality or local brewery beers, but more often than not, they're going up to $6 and $7 these days. That's what I'm seeing, and that's fine if the beer is good.
Oh, absolutely. Course,
But when I get a craft beer from a brewery, but it's just not that special, yet I'm going to pay $7 or $8, then I'm not happy with that.
Right, and you're thinking to yourself, I could have gotten a macro brew.
Or two of them.
Well, or I could have got a Sierra Nevada or something.
Right, something that's going to have constant,
quality,
high quality.
Yeah. I mean, that's a problem, and that's a tough part, tough road for these little breweries.
Right.
You're judged against the best in the market, even though you're local and you're tiny. You still got to make good beer. We're going to be back here, take a quick break, come back, though. We're going to talk a little bit about some things at the Greenbrier Valley Brewing and a few other little more controversial subjects about beer consumption. So when we come back, we're also going to have another beer to taste. So we'll be right back. Okay, we have full glasses of beer, and we're going to pick this back up and talk a little bit about Greenbrier Valley Brewing. Libby Rojas, what are we drinking from Greenbrier Valley Brewing right now?
We are drinking their Devil Ants India Pale Ale. It is their flagship beer.
And best-selling
beer. It's an IPA that non-IPA drinkers love. Me. It literally changed my taste in beer. I did not like IPAs before. Did not like them at all. And one day I tried the Devil Ants, and it was delicious. It was like a bit of spring. It was so green and tasty. And
this was an incredible breakthrough recipe for West Virginia brewers.
It's a game changer. It was a game changer for me entirely. I started trying IPAs after that.
Yeah. Wow. So it opened up the waterfall, so to speak, for you in terms of style for IPA. That's great.
Yeah. When Brian Rymiller and the original Greenbrier Valley Brewing people put this recipe together, I was knocked out, as how good it was, and was so positive about this beer. And then, unfortunately, it's had issues, as staff changed and owners changed at Greenbrier Valley Brewing. That beer went all over the place a little bit, Unfortunately, not always for the better, I'll tell you. Well, now, as talking with Dave Barron, who's the head brewer over there now with the new ownership group. That beer is back to its top flight, I think.
Oh yeah, this glass that I'm drinking right now is fantastic. And while Charles is not drinking in proper glassware, I think between Aaron and I, we've got some fancy glasses.
We do have some fancy glasses, and it is.
All right, quit laughing at my highball glass here full of Devil Ants IPA. Because IPAs should have a lot of hop aroma. I mean, these modern IPAs, and this is certainly an example of a modern IPA. They have dry hopped, and they carry a lot of aroma from their brewing process, and you do benefit from having a glass that has a little bit of an inward curve, a little bit fatter at the bottom and a more inward curve to come up. So
that being my glass, which is more of a stone glass that's skinnier
but
at the bottom.
But it does have this, skinnier at the bottom, has an inward curve that kind of collects those vapors that come from the aromas that, in the beer, and especially the hops in an IPA.
So, yeah, that's a good explanation.
Boy, it's a classic West Virginia IPA, I'll tell you. And it's drinking so good today.
It really is. This is such a good beer.
It is. And since they have been under new ownership, I can say I have definitely sought out cans, but I haven't had it on draft. I think this is maybe the second time I've had it on draft. But it's very much back to, I think, the original recipe, and it's fantastic.
Well, when I talked to Josh Bennett for a past podcast here back in the winter, and Josh is the guy who bought the brewery from receivership and got it started again. I guess they restarted officially, probably late last summer.
Yeah, that was a fun interview.
Yeah, it was. He's a character, and I tell you what, he was committed, and as he told us, Aaron, that he was going to bring back all those best recipes. He wasn't going to do any of the crappy stuff or the cheapen the beer stuff like had happened at that brewery over time. He was going back to bring the best of the best back.
He was, and very dedicated.
Yeah, and they've done that here.
I think that they absolutely have done that, and I think it shows. And especially if people, as you said, have witnessed that recipe change over time, I feel like they're going to see that, wow, okay, this seems familiar.
Yeah, this tastes like the beer that blew me away and changed my taste buds.
Yeah.
Right, and if you're going to have a flagship, it needs to be good, it needs to be consistent, and you can tiny tweak it over the years, but you don't want to make any big changes to the hopping or to the malts
It didn't
process.
need changes.
No. So anyway, Brian Rymiller, who developed the original recipe, who's now brewing up at Big Timber, he's moved on from Greenbrier Valley. But Brian, kudos, Brian, for this original recipe.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And kudos to Josh Bennett and crew at the new Greenbrier Valley Brewing for bringing back the way we remember and way we want to have and to drink our Devil Ants IPA.
Absolutely.
Well, one thing I saw, guys, I wonder what you thought about this. Just recently, they have introduced Devil Ants IPA, which was always in a 12-ounce can. Now they've also added a 19.2-ounce tall can.
They have, yeah.
What do you think about that?
That's quite a bit of beer.
Yeah, it is.
I will say this. For me, personally, it's a no-go. But I like IPAs cold, and I'm not a fast drinker. So, it takes me half an hour to an hour to drink a full beer. So a 19-ounce beer it's gonna be warm by the time I'm done with it. But I am not your typical IPA drinker, and I know tons of guys who are going to be so thrilled and will be able to chug one of those with no problem before it starts to get too warm. Throw a couple of those in a backpack. You go hiking or mountain biking or
football game, or sporting event in general. It doesn't have to be a football game, but
outdoor activities. A couple of those as opposed to having to put a whole 6-pack in your thing, because those long skinny beers, they fit better in your bags.
Yeah, no, I could see
that. Yeah, it's a cool can, so that's a line extension. I'm sure it'll find a home because that's Devil Ants has always been Greenbrier Valley's, at least since it's been available. It's always been their most popular beer or their brand.
Yeah, it's always sold well.
Yeah, it's done very well across the state.
I can see that selling at sporting events, because I know a lot of times I'll go to sporting events and the big, tall more than 16-ounce beer cans are more popular because people don't have to get up 20 times to get a new beer.
That's a good point. No, I enjoy seeing our breweries innovate, and I don't recall in West Virginia seeing beers in those 19.2-ounce cans before. I mean, not from a local brewery.
Right, and they are popular.
Yeah, I mean, so give it a try, and see what you think. It might be a big deal for them. I don't know. Recently, really over the last year or so, something that's kind of concerned me from the World Health Organization, among others, they've been putting out information that where we used to say, oh, okay, you can have a beer a day or you can have a drink a day, and then that's okay for your health. Well, they're now saying, and I'll quote from the World Health Organization, no level of alcohol consumption is safe for our health. And that's kind of a headline they've used. And so I'm just wondering, I mean, none of us are health experts or medical people, but, it's been something that societies have done since, thousands of years ago.
Sure. Wild animals, I think dogs and pigs and monkeys will all dig up fermented fruit.
And birds will wait for berries to ripen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it just seems odd. I call this the new prohibitionists. The old prohibitionists had other reasons not to drink, but whatever. These people are saying now that you shouldn't drink at all. And this is like, they're pushing this, and they probably have legislative agendas, and there'll be people, I don't know how many years it'll take to get to West Virginia before, our legislature is saying, oh, yeah, you should have prohibition again because it's bad for our health and it's costing our society so much money, because people are drinking beer or drinking anything, really, alcohol.
Sure. And I've actually been, thinking about it. But, and they've talked about this before, soda. No amount of soda is good for you either. I mean, it is literally carbonated sugar water.
Yeah, just processed sugars are certainly on the no-no list.
And food coloring.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any kind of consensus whether coffee or tea or any good for
well,
you.
they go back and forth with coffee and eggs, I feel like.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah,
coffee
that's true.
is great for you sometimes. Eggs are great for you sometimes. Maybe a glass of wine is good for you sometimes. It just kind of depends on when you're asking this question.
Yeah, I will continue to have my morning coffee.
Me too.
Same.
And maybe my evening beer, too.
Yeah, well, no, also. And, yeah, I think it's interesting. And I think it kind of goes with the whole craft beer change in terms of the way that craft beer is trending as far as alcohol content,
Yeah.
low alcohol content.
I certainly have, wondered about that through the years as craft beer came on. I mean, it used to be that it was distinguished itself from regular beer, the Bud Miller Coors beer, because it was higher in alcohol. It was always higher in alcohol.
Right.
But
Now it's starting to find beer styles in craft that aren't necessarily higher in alcohol. They're in that 4.5% to 5% range.
Yeah, but see, that is where I will say, at least for my craft growth, I would absolutely agree with that statement. I felt like craft beer was a little bit higher in ABV, but as a craft beer aficionado, as I've grown into that, it's more. It's not about ABV. It's about flavor.
Yeah. it is.
So it doesn't matter. It's the flavor that I'm
Right.
going for. But certainly, I can see that it's the ABV that would distinguish it initially if you're not familiar with craft beer.
Listen, I'm kind of unhappy about that from time to time when I go to a small brewery and their beers are all higher in alcohol than they need to be. To me, they're doing that because it's easier. It's harder to make. I think, Libby, when we were talking about lagers a while ago,
Yeah.
they're lower ABV, like your basic pale lagers, but they're hard to make well with lower ABV. It's easier to make beer with flavor by knocking up the alcohol content.
Well,
which,
I think that's one of the complaints people often had about IPAs is, it's easier to hide mistakes in the process with a higher alcohol content and a higher hop content,
Yeah. Yes. I mean, absolutely.
well, we've
Nothing wrong with a big beer, though.
No, and I would agree
No,
with that.
I'm a
I
fan.
like
They
it
have
too.
their place. I mean, certainly, I mean, the wines I buy are probably close to 14, 15%, a lot of them. I
Oh,
mean,
sure,
so,
yeah.
you just have to moderate what you drink. You can't just pound those down, like bottle after bottle. But, Lord, beer that we're seeing in our market, it's anywhere. The popular styles are probably from, 5 to 7, probably. That's the bulk of the beer that sells in our market, at least the craft market.
I would think so.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're, again, going specifically for
Yeah.
the big beers like the double.
Yeah.
The imperial
triples,
stouts
the
and
imperial
things,
stouts.
yeah, no doubt.
Inevitably are a bit harder to
Yeah.
find in our
But
market as
again,
well.
as I was joking, I am a fan of the big beer. But like I said earlier, if I'm drinking, a big imperial stout, it's going to usually take me an hour to get through a glass of that. you know?
Yeah,
yeah.
It's a sipper.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Some other new things that are hitting our market in West Virginia that's related to craft, but it's not exclusively anything about craft beer, and that's the what they call PODA, or Public Outdoor Designated Areas, and what I call them is public outdoor drinking areas for PODA, but they're. But
I mean,
anyway,
that's essentially what they are. So that's fair.
that's about what it is.
I agree with that.
But I mean, these are the new things that cities are putting into effect because the legislature allows it now, or the state laws allow it, so that the cities can adopt designated areas within their towns, maybe downtown where they have a lot of bars and restaurants, and they can allow you then to take beer or wine or even, I guess, liquor from one bar to the other in your cup. You used to couldn't leave the place with a cup that had alcohol in it. Now, in those PODA areas, you can walk down the street with alcohol. So I'm just curious, what do you guys think about that? I mean, I know they're new and we probably haven't had a lot of experience with them, but what are you seeing?
If you read some stuff online,
I haven't done that.
There are a lot of people that are like, "Oh, this is just welcoming drinking to our area."
Well, that's a good point, and it probably is.
Well, I mean, yeah, it is, but it's not like the way that it's. What I have read, the way that it's received is that it's like it's welcoming, a bunch of drunks to an area, and that is not at all the reason for this law. It's so that people can walk between establishments that are locally within the same area and promote local shops when they're already most likely going to walk between establishments. They're just going to take their already purchased drink with them and then get a new drink.
And it's right. Is it true that you can take a drink from a bar where you bought it legally to
another area,
another
as long
store
as
that doesn't even sell liquor or wine or beer?
As long as it's in
As
the
long as
designated area.
They are participants in the PODA.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So really,
Yeah.
you can go shopping like you were saying. I think that's
Yeah.
an important
Yes.
distinction. It's
Yes.
not just to take it to bar.
No, it's
you
not
can
to
take
just
it
walk
even,
around with an
You
alcoholic
can take
beverage
it to other
randomly.
stores that are participants. But if they're not participants, you can't go in there. Right? To me, it's kind of a confusing concept.
It can be.
I mean, why do people want to walk around with a drink in their hand or an alcohol drink in their hand outside and not be in the bar? I mean, what's the attraction of that?
I mean, for me, I could see designated times of the year,
right. And I'm
yeah.
sure the cities have control over when they allow that to happen.
Well, and I guess that's my question too. Me, I'm the same as you. I really don't have an urge to go shopping while drinking, but I was a fan of Charleston's Art Walk.
Right. And that now could come under that PODA thing,
Right.
where used to be you couldn't take a drink out
Right.
in your hand.
And
or
people would, and I think maybe that was
but it
the
was
impetus.
illegal, supposedly.
Part of the impetus for it is that people did it anyway. Yeah, I could see being okay with, I know during the summer concerts at our Riverfront Park, they do allow people to
they did.
to wander around in that area.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the confusing things people don't necessarily all understand is you did have permitted like festival areas, they've had that for a number of years, where you could have open containers of your beverage out there, of alcoholic beverages. But this one now is different because it extends beyond like the festival area to the whole like downtown areas.
I mean, I'm not against it. I probably wouldn't take advantage of it.
Yeah,
you know?
I just, that's what I was kind of curious. Do you guys think it will make a difference? I mean, is it big enough to make a difference?
Well, I mean, I certainly think that, I feel like with the recent tourism changes and brewery influxes and or tap rooms that we've had in Charleston, that the POTA law changes definitely help that, especially for tourism. If people are trying to travel and they want to try a beer and maybe walk, or if they're able to walk within distance within the designated POTA area, that's a positive, and a draw for people, so they can, because the POTA area includes multiple places for tasting. I feel like that's a positive thing that tourism folks are going to want to see and want to look up and will be appreciative of. So in terms of POTA, I think that's a positive for that specific area.
Now, I could actually, and you've made me just start thinking about it. You know how they have those little concerts at Slack Plaza?
Yeah.
And they have
sure.
There's multiple breweries, in that area.
Yeah, right there.
Now, I could see that, being able to get a beer at one of those breweries and walk to Slack Plaza and watch a band, because generally, as far as I know, that there is no alcohol or anything like that being sold during those little concerts.
Yeah,
right?
Unless they have a festival permit and a pass. Anyway.
But generally, it's just music.
Right.
So I could see, walking into some place, getting, your little to-go beer cup and walking out to listen to some music. I could see it under that circumstance.
Okay.
If that was included in the area.
So I think it's just something that's brand new. It's being developed. It's the legislature, I think, even maybe fixed a couple of the glitches in the law this past March, where I know, for instance, when the POTA first passed and came into effect the summer of 2023, that you couldn't, as a beer place, if you just had a beer license like a brewery, you couldn't participate in the POTA. You had to have a liquor license to participate in the POTA. So now I think they may have fixed that. Let's hope.
I would hope so.
So it's going to be more open to more places, including just beer bars or brewery bars that don't sell liquor or anything. So we'll wait and see. It's an interesting concept, and I'll give it some time and talk to the bar owners, the brewery owners, and see if they think it makes a difference. And
it's definitely an interesting concept, and I think it's an incredible tourism concept.
All right. We're going to take another short break here, and we'll be back to wrap up this with another discussion on our last topic of the evening, and that is Charleston, West Virginia breweries. We West Virginians love a good beer festival, and the 2024 festival season is already here. To find information on beer fests across West Virginia, check out the festival listings on brilliantstream.com. Just click the festival tab to find dates, locations, and details. You'll often find a ticket link, too. We hope to see you at a West Virginia Beer Fest. And we're back with Roundtable on West Virginia Beer Roads. And Aaron McCoy, you were introducing one of the beers, the first beer that we drank this evening at the pub here, and we didn't know the actual name of that because it wasn't on the tap. So what did you find out?
I found out that I think that this porter is Hey Porter from the Free Folk Brewery.
Spell that, Hey?
Hey, H-E-Y.
Okay, it is.
Which is, well-rounded with just the right touch of malty, full-bodied taste.
Yeah, it definitely did. It had a great taste. Well, anyway, as we wrap up this podcast today, I wanted our crew here, Libby and Aaron and me, to get into a little bit of some of the things that are going on in Charleston. And one of the biggest positive things, I think, in Charleston beer community is the fact that we now have like 4 brewery outlets here in our city.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. And Libby, maybe you could start off. How's that affected you?
Oh, I think it's so exciting. And I like that they're not all stuck in one place too. We've got our little, what we've been calling the brewery row, but We've also got some on the west side in the Elk City part of the west side of Charleston, and it's great. There's, the Nano Brewery is there. Plus, there's a meadery and a distillery, so it's exciting.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and I didn't even talking about breweries, but you're right. Over on the west side, and what we call Elk City is
Wandering
Wind.
Meadery.
Wandering Wind. And then there's the Bullock Distillery, which of course you can't go in there and get I think legally right yet anyway, a mixed drink.
You can get a sample,
but
though.
you can get a sample,
You
a
definitely
taste, and you can
yeah.
certainly buy a bottle to go. And we certainly support our Bullock Distillery, and we've done some podcasts in the past with them before. Anyway, so yeah, but you're right. It's a change here from for like 9 years. We just had one brewery downtown. It started out as Charleston Brewing, then it moved to was bought out and became Bad Shepherd, and we didn't have any for like 9 years. Though we had one brewery downtown, and now we have 3 brewery outlets downtown.
Yeah, and it's great. I had always thought to myself, I've been to smaller towns than Charleston that had multiple breweries. And I was always astounded as to why can these little teeny tiny towns have multiple breweries. And I think, before we even had one.
Yeah.
And then we only had one for the longest time. And, God bless, I love it, and I will still go drink beer there. But it's great to have options.
It
Yeah.
sure is. And I always said all along, because, I'm looking at the craft beer nationally, and I'd say if you only have one brewery, you really don't have any, because one just doesn't even put you on the map. What makes breweries good is having 3 or 4 close together where they compete. It makes each of them better. It's that competition. Maybe they specialize, so you get different kinds of products. It's an amazing dynamic.
And you end up with more educated consumers. The more people wander around to the different breweries, the more familiar they are going to be with different kinds of craft beer.
And it's overall community support. I mean, you're going to get the community support from the standpoint of a political standpoint, from in jobs, employees, the economic support, all around tourism, which is a huge thing, and I feel like that Charleston is like trying to capitalize on, and I don't disagree. Again, we are, I feel like, a little slow coming to the era of craft beer, but I'm glad that we're here, and I'm glad people are investing in us, and it's exciting, and I hope that our consumers take notice and come out and try some craft beer.
Yeah, it's great to see Mayor Amy Goodwin embrace our things like the POTAs, things like the craft beer bars, and incorporate them into programming that the city is doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the kind of things that other cities that are doing well do. So, whenever I hear people start to complain, I'm going, go to a big city. Those are the kinds of things they do that bring people in.
Right.
And make a better lifestyle.
Sure. It's like Aaron was saying. I mean, for tourism, you have to have a congregation. If you just have one brewery, that's not a tourism draw. But when you've got 3 that are close together, that really makes a difference. So people who visit Charleston from out of town notice that.
Well, and not just breweries, but they pick up on restaurant reviews. They pick up on, local events. Like it all kind of spirals. I mean, it's all around very supportive and lucrative for a city to support their craft beverage industry.
Yeah, I mean, we've been an area that certainly in our Charleston region, it's a shrinking region. It's losing population, or it has over the last 30, 40 years. It's been a slow decline, and I think that we've been a little slow to pick up on the new things like breweries, local breweries that help kind of put an anchor down and make it a place that people want to be. Yeah. So I think that will. I mean, there's a whole, certainly a group of people who don't care about breweries. Well, that more power to them. I mean, they don't have to go. But people that like them, like us, it's been great to have the 3 down in the heart of downtown, and then one over on the west side, which we were just talking about the Charleston Nano Brewery, which is a kind of a pioneer, helping bring new stuff to an area that's getting redeveloped.
Yeah.
Yeah, and exciting, and doing their best to bring a community together, and networking in with the existing community members that are, as you said, reviving a community, and bringing some economic development to the area. So that is great.
The revitalization of that area has been one of my favorite things to happen in Charleston in the last 20 years.
Very good. We're still, West Virginia had, in a sense, the benefit of being a late bloomer in this, because we could see the things not to do and the ways that didn't work for other smaller communities around the country that were ahead of us in that sense of developing breweries. And so we've still got opportunities here. And unlike maybe other parts of the nation that, like certainly big urban areas where maybe it got oversaturated with small breweries, we haven't had that issue. We've still got, the per capita kind of, thing. We've got some room to grow. And I hope that, brewers or people who are thinking of doing brewing or maybe investing in breweries, that they will look at West Virginia. We've had 2 breweries open this year. Here in West Virginia, 2 new ones. And so we're still, trending up, and we've got a couple more that are in progress. I just heard from some people recently in Clarksburg. They've pretty much announced that they're doing a brewery in Clarksburg, a nice investment. It does sound, and I hope to have an article on brilliantstream.com pretty soon about that.
Oh, it sounds
Good.
exciting.
Yeah, I hope that's positive and growth, and what we were just discussing, so that's good to hear.
Well, Libby Rojas, our guest here today on the Roundtable for West Virginia Beer Roads. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me. I've had so much fun.
Yeah, it's been a great time.
Hope to do it again. We got to
Absolutely.
have you on when we can do another place, another location, and
Yeah.
highlight some other new things in our craft
I'm happy to
brewing
help you
world.
drink beer anywhere.
And
Libby.
Aaron McCoy, our co-host of West Virginia Beer Roads. Aaron, always good to be with you and talking about beer.
Absolutely, my favorite subject.
So we're going to wrap this up here at the East End Pub in Charleston, West Virginia. So get on out, support your local craft beer outlets like these East End Pubs and many other bars and restaurants around the region.
This brings us to the close of another podcast. Remember, you can subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast host. Thank you for listening to West Virginia Beer Roads.
West Virginia Beer Roads is a production of BrilliantStream.com.